Hi, everyone. This is John DeLynn, host of Mormon Stories podcast and also executive director of the Open Stories Foundation. I wanted to take a few minutes just to let you know that Mormon Stories really is at a crossroads. Over the past year, we've tried to extend our podcast offerings to do all sorts of other really cool things, which we'll talk about in a second. But in that, we're now looking back and trying to decide whether the work we've done over the past year is of value to you and whether or not it's something you want to see going forward. So what we decided to do was to create a multimedia presentation that you can access at mormonstories.org or on YouTube. And the purpose of the presentation is twofold. One, we want to let you know what Mormon Stories is about. What have we been trying to do over the past year? What's our strategy? And then secondly, we want to let you know what is needed or what we need from you to be able to keep doing what we've done and to keep Mormon Stories alive. Now, to begin, we wanted to start with something very simple. We want to let you know that everything we do with Mormon Stories is rooted in a deep love for Mormons and for Mormonism. We do not want to be anti-Mormons. We're not desiring to hurt anybody. We love Mormons. We love Mormonism, and that informs everything we do. But as Elder Marlon Jensen noted when he came to Utah State University last year, he said himself, quote, "Maybe since Kirtland, we've never had a period of, I'll call it apostasy, like we're having right now," end quote. And this is what we've found as well as we've conducted our own research through the Why Mormons Question Survey. We've discovered that people in the United States and Canada, in Asia and in Europe, Mormons across all those regions are leaving the church or disbelieving in the church at increasingly high rates. And this is causing all sorts of problems. And we want to be a constructive part of dealing with this solution. And so let us maybe start first by telling you what we're not trying to do in this situation. We're not trying to criticize the LDS church leadership for what's going on. We're not trying to change LDS church doctrine or policy. We're not trying to convince people to leave the church. We have no interest in that. We never have done that. But we're also not trying to convince people to stay in the church if it's not working for them. And then finally, we're absolutely not trying to start a new church. So if we're not trying to do those things, what are we trying to do? Well, what we're trying to do is to focus on areas where the LDS church is ill-equipped or unable to provide support for its members or former members. And we have sort of 5 main areas that we're trying to focus on. And we hope you can understand and value these areas. Number 1, we're trying to help support the exploration of the more difficult aspects of LDS church history and culture in a way that seeks to be neutral. There are many difficult aspects of LDS church history and culture that you just can't learn about or talk about on Sunday or in seminary or an institute. And many people are stumbling upon these issues. On the internet, you can find lots of, I'll say, ex-Mormon materials that are critical of the church, and you can find lots of apologetic materials that try and convince you to stay in the church. But what you can't find very often on the internet are neutral resources to just help facilitate your exploration of the difficult topics. And that's what Mormon Stories and Mormon Matters tries to do, is to help facilitate that exploration. Secondly, we try to facilitate open, authentic discussions about difficult topics in a safe environment without pressure. So again, if you discover difficult or troubling things about the church, you really can't go into Sunday school or priesthood or relief society or into seminary. You can't go to your bishop or, ward members or even sometimes your family to discuss your concerns, because that's just not the way the church works. And so instead, we're trying to create these open forums for discussion so that people can talk about difficult things. The third thing we're trying to do is to provide unconditional acceptance and support for Mormons who don't fit the mold. Now, there's many types of Mormons that just don't quite fit in within the traditional LDS experience. Some of these include intellectuals, people struggling in their faith, feminists, those who love science and want to talk about it, political liberals, gays and lesbians, inactive and ex-Mormons. All of these people in one way or another feel very uncomfortable at church being open about what they think and what they feel and who they are. And so we're trying to provide a forum of unconditional support and acceptance for these people, since they really can't find that at church. The fourth thing we're trying to do is to support Mormons in transition. There are all sorts of difficult Mormon transitions today. Faith transitions, difficulties in marriage, divorce, people with same-sex attraction, even people who are trying to become unorthodox believers, or even who want to return to the church after having left for a long time. These are all difficult transitions to make, and we want to help support people in those transitions. Finally, through various initiatives, we're trying to help advance Mormon culture in healthy directions. We believe that there's lots of good things about Mormon culture, but maybe we have a ways to go in several areas, and we're trying to be a positive resource of support to advance Mormon culture. Now, if you go to mormonstories.org, you'll find a new section of members' stories where you can read about all the different ways that many people have found benefit in Mormon stories. But today we're going to focus on the story of just one Mormon Stories listener. And it's a little bit of an extreme story, but we think that it will touch your heart and help you understand what we're all about. And the story is about Marco. Marco is a wonderful man. He is from the Netherlands. He's a third-generation Mormon, which is quite unique in the Netherlands. He's a returned missionary. He's served as Elders Quorum president, Young Men's president, an institute instructor, a temple worker. He has a PhD in biochemistry, and he's married in the temple with 3 wonderful children. Now, about a year ago, Marco's good friend left the church, stopped believing in it. And Marco had so much love for this friend that he decided that he wanted to start studying and learning about the difficult issues that caused his friend to leave the church so that he could help his friend. So he started studying, and he started developing questions about several things, including the Book of Abraham, and whether or not it was truly a translation from the Egyptian papyri as he had understood. Second thing, he started studying about Joseph Smith, and he learned that Joseph Smith had married Orson Hyde's wife while Orson Hyde was still alive and serving a mission. And this is very troubling to Marco. And the third thing that happened is that Marco is a supporter of gays and lesbians and gay marriage. So when the church came out with Proposition 8, and Marco had studied the Doctrine and Covenants, which discourages the church from mingling in political affairs, Marco became very troubled. And these 3 things led to a real crisis of faith for Marco, where he started to doubt his testimony, and he didn't know who to turn to. And it became so problematic, to be honest, that Marco became suicidal. He writes, "As I saw no way forward, the option of ending things permanently for me and my wife and children became an option that was constantly on my mind." Marco continues, "I'm on my way to pick up my mother-in-law to babysit as I burst into tears. I had just run a red light at a crossroad on entering the highway. I wanted to hit the brake, but was compelled to keep my foot on the gas." So psychologically, Marco was running red lights intentionally as a way to potentially end his life because he was in so much pain over these difficult issues he was struggling with. Marco continued in his story to write, "I realized I had become an actual danger to myself and my surroundings." And he told me personally that the time that he knew that he was in a really drastic state was when he started running these red lights with his wife and children in the car. And he knew that he had to find a solution. Now, what would make someone want to take his own life, like Marco? The answer is when you're not able to find answers to your questions, when you feel like you're alone and broken, and when you feel like there's no way out. Sometimes suicide becomes the only way out. And this was true for Marco. He couldn't talk to his bishop. He couldn't talk to his family members. He couldn't talk to his wife. And so suicide became the only idea he could come up with to end the pain and suffering he was feeling. And then one day he stumbled on Mormon Stories podcast. And on Mormon Stories podcast, he was able to discover over 500 hours of audio and video content that were created specifically for someone like Marco. Not trying to get him out of the church, not trying to convince him to stay, but allowing him to explore Joseph Smith, polygamy, Book of Abraham, Book of Mormon issues in a safe and neutral environment so that he could learn what he felt like he wanted to learn and then make decisions himself about what he'd wanted. The first podcast he listened to was Terrell Givens' podcast, and from there he listened to hundreds of hours of Mormon Stories podcast. Marco wrote in his story, quote, "Through the Mormon Stories podcasts, I became aware of the more mature view that the truthfulness of the church doesn't have to be seen as an all or nothing issue, but that one can relish the good the church has to offer while guarding yourself and your loved ones from being weighed down with perceived obligations, guilt, and feelings of inadequacy." Now, different people get different things from Mormon Stories, but for Marco, because his wife was a believer, because his children were in the church, he felt like he needed to find a way to become an untraditional, unorthodox believer and thinker, but still maintain some association with the church. After discovering the podcast, the next thing that Marco discovered was the Facebook support group community. If you go to mormonstories.org, you can find a button that says Join Our Facebook Group. And if you click on that, you get to join a closed Facebook support group that currently has over 1,700 members. And on this group, Marco was able to see that he's not the only person who struggles with these issues. He was able to see other people post questions and receive support. And then he got to the point where he was comfortable asking his own questions and getting answers. And this was very helpful to Marco because, again, it made him feel supported, it made him feel helped, and it provided him with an open and a safe forum to express his questions and concerns and to get answers. The next thing that Marco did to get support was to attend the Washington, D.C. Mormon Stories Conference. Now, this was a big deal for Marco because he had to actually purchase a plane flight across the Atlantic to attend this conference, but he did. And let's just spend a little bit of time, if you don't mind. I'll tell you about what these conferences are about. The main thing that these conferences are about are bringing together all types of Mormons. And in this case, you'll find that the Washington, D.C. Mormon Stories Conference, and in all our conferences, we had traditional believers, we had non-traditional believers, we had feminists, we had gays and lesbians, we had ex-Mormons and inactive Mormons. And there in this picture on the YouTube presentation, you'll see Marco and Femke, his wife. And together they were able to attend this presentation and again feel safe and join a community of people like them trying to explore and celebrate and discover what Mormonism means to them. Now, we designed these conferences to be comfortable for all types of Mormons, including believers. So we try and set a constructive tone. We try and keep the conversations constructive. We have someone conduct and preside over the meetings. We begin and end these conferences with prayers, both traditional prayers and sometimes non-traditional prayers or moments of silence. We always try and have beautiful music at these conferences so that people can feel uplifted and inspired. In the Washington, D.C. conference, we had Greg Prince come. He is a member of the Stake High Council in Maryland. So he's an active, believing member, but he's also a scholar. And he was able to talk about Mormonism in a very uplifting and inspiring way. We had an ex-Mormon come talk about his experiences, again, in a very constructive way. We had a prominent Mormon feminist scholar come talk about her experiences as a Mormon. And in this picture, you can see Marco introducing his wife, Femke, to the audience. And you can tell that they're feeling at ease and at home, knowing that they have other people that they can talk to. Because back in the Netherlands, they didn't know anybody who was struggling with these issues. Now, one of the most beautiful parts of these Mormon Stories conferences is the story sharing meeting. And in the DC conference, we had a story sharing session where a new convert bore his testimony or shared his feelings and experiences. We had active traditional believers share their views about Mormonism and tell their stories. We had a member of the gay and lesbian community share his experience. We even had a beautiful man named John Burleson come to the conference for the first sort of experience in a Mormon scenario in over 2 decades. He had been excommunicated in his Maryland area ward for being gay, again, decades ago. And he hadn't really stepped foot in a LDS congregation since, or gotten together in any real scenario with other Mormons. And in this DC conference, John was able to share his feelings, share the fact that in his case, he actually missed affiliation with Mormons. And John actually started attending church again as a result of his experience at the Mormon Stories Conference in D.C. And finally, here's a picture of Marco actually sharing his story with the audience, which is a beautiful story. I hope that you'll go to mormonstories.org and look up the DC conference and listen to his story there. Marco shared again in his story, quote, "Hearing the many perspectives on spirituality from people telling their Mormon story is soothing to my mind and soul, giving me hope for an ever happier future with my family in the church." So Marco said, hearing these stories soothes his soul and helps quiet the pain and the anxiety that he was feeling. Here's a picture of Marco. Here's a picture of Marco and Femke talking to other people and attendees at the conference, learning from other couples about how they navigate a mixed faith marriage where one doesn't believe in a traditional way and the other does. Here's a picture of the attendees having dinner together, talking to each other, sharing stories. It was quite beautiful. Marco said at the end of the conference, quote, "Attending a regional Mormon Stories conference with my wife was well worth the transatlantic flight. It was a great way of spiritually bonding with my wife again, who said the Mormon Stories conference to her felt just like being at church." Marco continued, quote, "At present, I share my positive spiritual insights with my wife, while I find solace from sharing frustrations and finding support in the Mormon Stories Facebook groups." Now, we've held over 10 of these conferences across the United States, in Salt Lake City, San Diego, Houston, Denver, Atlanta, Boise, New York City. And in every case, we've had people say that they felt uplifted and inspired. Mormons, active Mormons, and inactive and ex-Mormons alike. We want to continue these conferences. In addition to the conferences, one of the major things that we've done over the past year is that we've created over 80 support communities across the world, over 60 cities within the United States, and then cities in Canada, in Europe, in Latin America, in Asia. And we've created a bunch of special interest groups or affinity groups for teenagers, for gays and lesbians, for the straight spouses of gays and lesbians, for single adults, for those with eating disorders, and for those who we call our venerables or our less young. The purpose of these support communities is that people can meet face to face in their local cities or regions with others. Marco, as soon as he got home from the Mormon Stories Conference, created his own Mormon Stories support community in the Netherlands. Now, the types of activities that these support communities have been engaging in over the past year, again, all across the globe, include conferences, meetups, book clubs where people get together and discuss books. We have podcast discussion groups where people talk about the podcasts, play groups where people can get their kids together to play, dinner nights, movie nights, hikes, campouts, group vacations. People have even helped each other move when they've had to move from place to place, and crisis support where people have been able to help each other in crisis. Because Facebook's great, but there's nothing like having real face-to-face, eye-to-eye friendship and community support in your city of choice. Now, this is just a quick review of the new things that we've been offering over the past year to try and help people in a constructive way within the context of Mormonism. Now, what is needed from you to keep Mormon Stories alive? We've been doing several things at the Open Stories Foundation to help make you feel comfortable giving us your financial support. And I'll just talk about them very briefly. We've put together a fabulous board of directors that's headed by Joanna Brooks, but it has several members of the community, including Ann Peffer, myself, Natasha Parker, Brian Johnston, Ashley Murbach, Michael Ferguson, and Scott Hawley, and Sarah Begley. All of these people love Mormons, love Mormonism, and want to be a constructive part of the solution to the pain and struggling that's within Mormonism. We've also put together a staff within the Open Stories Foundation, so it's not just me anymore. Ann Peffer has been hired as a part-time staff to help orchestrate strategic matters at every level of the organization. She's the one who created these local support groups. She's the one who's organized all these conferences. She's been helping with every aspect of Mormon Stories, and she's been a critical support. She's been working at probably $4 an hour over the past year, probably less. And we need to be able to pay her to be able to keep doing the things that we're doing. In addition, we brought on Terry Wittenberg purely as a volunteer. She's a CPA, a certified public accountant, and Terry has been responsible for getting our financial house in order, and she's done a fabulous job. We've also brought on Kevin Olson, who's a successful entrepreneur who has been helping us get our business operations in tip-top shape. Kevin's been fabulous, and we've done these things to help get organized and to help make sure that any contributions that you make will be well used. A second thing that we've put together, or third thing we've put together to help you feel more comfortable about supporting Mormon Stories, is that we've made our finances completely public and transparent. And all I'm going to say there is, if you want to find out how much I make, how much others make, what we've been spending our money on, you can go to openstoriesfoundation.org and you can see our financial statement for 2011 and know that we're keeping a financial statement for 2012 that we'll be sharing with all of you very publicly at the end of the year. A couple projects we've been working on. We've been working on renovating our websites so that there's a consistent look and feel and so that you can find the content you need to help you in your journey. And we've also started something called the Mormon Research Foundation, which is several research projects, again, to help advance Mormon culture in healthy ways. We've done research on the same-sex attracted experience within Mormonism. We've done research on Why Mormons Question, which has been presented to the highest level of LDS church leadership. And we've also just started a survey on perceptions about race within Mormonism. These are all very important, and there's much more to come. So, what are we asking from you to help keep Mormon Stories alive, to keep the conferences going, to keep these local Facebook communities going in the Mormon Research Foundation and the website renovations? The first thing we want to ask is that everybody who's currently a subscriber through PayPal to please consider canceling your PayPal subscription and resubscribing through our new customer relationship management system. You'll see these big buttons on the top right of mormonstories.org, of mormonmatters.org, and the Open Stories Foundation, where you can subscribe to Mormon Stories, get entered into our system, and you can click one of three different options. The three options are one-time donations, monthly donations, and pledge level memberships. Let's talk quickly about monthly donations. This really is the backbone of the foundation. We probably have about 500 people donating right now to the foundation through monthly donations. And the reason why these are critical is because if I'm going to have a salary, if Anna's going to be supported financially, if we're going to be able to pay the ongoing web hosting fees, the audio editing and video editing fees, consulting fees that we pay, the insurance for the board, and all the other things that NPR and PBS and all the other nonprofits, United Way, United Red Cross, all these nonprofits have to have, consistent revenue streams. And so these monthly donations are a way for you to contribute to us in a monthly way so we can forecast revenue and know what things we can afford and what things we can't afford. So please consider, if you haven't yet, signing up for monthly donations. You can donate for as little as $5 a month. You can donate $100 a month, whatever your budget allows. Please consider subscribing to monthly donations. A second way that we've tried to facilitate membership is through something we're calling a pledge level membership. Now, this is a special category of membership where people pay $500 or more, $500 or more. Now that comes out to only $41.67 a month at $500 or $83.33 a month at $1,000 a year. And this is sort of we'll just say sort of a premium level of membership where we hope to provide special support, special engagement, special opportunities to help us shape the future of the foundation. And one of the things that we wanted to throw in for free, anyone who does a pledge level membership to Mormon Stories of the Open Stories Foundation will be granted free admission to all our Mormon Stories conferences. Heck, I'd even be willing to have, quarterly or regularly lunches in the Salt Lake area and in cities that I travel to, where we bring together pledge level members to just talk, to hear your stories, to share things with you, to thank you for what you've done, and to offer whatever personal support we can to you. So if you're willing to be a pledge level member, I promise to do whatever I can to help. Thank you for that support. And the final way that you can contribute to Mormon Stories is just through one-time donations. And there's various reasons why people might want to donate in single instances. Maybe that's just how your finances work. Maybe you just want to give one donation in a lump sum. Whatever the reason is, you can give one-time donations at Mormon Stories. Now, in addition to financial support, we've also created a new section of our website called Volunteer. And if you click on that menu item, you'll find out that there's several things that you can do to help support Mormon Stories in addition to supporting us financially. You can start a new region in your area, a support region, so that people in your area can get together and support each other. You can take on a leadership role in that region. You can initiate regional events, book clubs and play groups and all the other things we've talked about. You can host events in your region. You can plan a conference with us. You can host a fundraising event. You can record a video. You can share your story. You can help with our web design, or if you have video or audio editing skills, you can volunteer that. There are lots of things that you can do. You could even produce a podcast or become a participant on a podcast. Whatever it is that you're able to do, there's a way that you can let us know about your skills and volunteer. So we encourage you to please volunteer and help Mormon Stories survive. So I just want to conclude. Thank you for your time today. I want to let you know that we have loved serving you over the past 7 years. It's been an honor. We hope that you've valued and appreciated what we've been able to contribute to Mormonism. And we want to just let you know that we're a struggling, nascent 501c3 nonprofit organization. We feel like we've provided, in some sense, world-class content and services to you on what really is a shoestring budget. We're working at $3 to $5 an hour to provide you with our content and with our services. And we do this not because we're here to make money, not because we're trying to get rich. We're doing this only because we believe in what we're doing and because many of you have told us that what we're doing is valuable. But we want to let you know that we cannot continue without your support. We have to end these conferences. We have to end these Facebook support communities. And at some point, we'll have to end the podcast if we can't get the support financially that we need to continue to make this happen. So again, I want to just end with this plea. Please go to mormonstories.org or mormonmatters.org. Click on one of the donate buttons and please offer support. We just want to let you know that we love you. We value you. We appreciate you. We want to keep doing what we're doing. And we will be able to if you step up and support us. So again, this is John DeLynn. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to those of you who are supporting us. And thank you to all of those who are going to go out right now and give us your support. We promise to make the next 7 years or 8 years even better than what we've provided so far. So thank you so much and God bless.